Assalamualaikum and good day, so ladies and gentlemen. My name is Batrisyia binti Mohd Faizul and I am 16 years old. I am proud to say that I am a student from Sekolah Menengah Kebangsaan Batrisyia, code AEA 2065. I am very delighted to be able to talk about my most favorite novel of all time. It is titled Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre is a novel that was written by Charlotte Bronte. It was published in 19 October 1874 and the copy that I read was published in by the Scholastic.Inc. It has over 512 pages long with a total of 38 chapters. The story main focus was about the protagonist Jane Eyre on how she developed as a person throughout her childhood to her adulthood. Jane Eyre is an orphan girl who lived with her aunt and was always being mistreated. One day, as a punishment, she was locked in a room that was called the Red Room. That room was called a Red Room because of a traumatic event where her uncle had died in that room. Jane had swore that she could have seen the ghost of the dead uncle and had fainted. She then found herself awake and then she had learned she would be sent to school named Lowood. At Lowood, the school was in a bad condition and the school was run by a hypocritical man, Mr. Brookhurst. Thankfully, there was a supervisor named Maria Temple who always let the girls to have a break that they needed. Soon after, there was a typhus epidemic that ran over the school and had made a lot of people had lost their life. That is including Jane's friend, Helen. But also because of this epidemic, the principal, Mr. Brookhurst, had changed school. Soon, Jane's life had drastically improved and she had been schooling there for 6 years as a student and 2 years as a teacher. She then found herself getting hired at a manor called Thornfield. At Thornfield, she met Mr. Rochester, the employer who hired her to teach her daughter Edley as a private tutor. One night, Jane had saved Mr. Rochester's life from a burning fire. Mr. Rochester had claimed that the fire was started by a servant. However, the servant was left unpunished, which made Jane suspicious and very worried. However, those thoughts had to be put on hold because of an arrival of a lady named Miss Egerham. Miss Egerham had planned to marry Mr. Rochester. However, Mr. Rochester had no plan to be married to Miss Egerham. He, however, had proposed to Jane. Jane unexpectedly accepted, even though she wasn't expecting that he was going to propose to her. On the wedding day, Jane had learned something horrible and horrendous. Turns out Mr. Rochester already have a wife that is named Bertha Mason. The reason why Mr. Rochester does not tell Jane about Bertha Mason was because Bertha Mason is a crazy lady who is in need of help. When Jane learned this, she fled and finding herself penniless and homeless and had nowhere to go. She then found herself ended up at a Moore house where she found 3 siblings that took her in and offered her jobs. She then finds out that those 3 people was actually her relative and her uncle had left her with a lot of money to live with. She then come to a realization that her life was going better, but she is still lonely and very sad. She had missed Mr. Rochester. So then she goes back to the manor to check on what had happened to the manor and the people around there. She then learned that the manor was burning. People were trying to save their life. and Mr. Rochester was nowhere to be found. So did Bertha Mason. Afterward, the aftermath of the fire, Mr. Rochester was actually alive and had lost his eyesight and his hand. Bertha Mason, however, had killed herself in the fire. Jane had proposed and promised to Mr. Rochester that she'll take care of him for the rest of her life, and had fallen in love with Mr. Rochester once again. And in conclusion, this novel, we must trust and never lie to people that we cherish. That is all for now. Thank you for watching this video.